she always loved school until about end of kindergarten, first grade, and then the tears started.
That's this episode's guest, Julie Gunter, who I met in Washington State. Welcome to Lindamood-Bell Radio, a podcast on all things literacy and learning. I'm Dave Hungerford for Lindamood-Bell, and we believe that every individual can learn to read and comprehend to their potential. Communities around the country are launching new dyslexia initiatives so struggling readers can get the help they need. Schools are challenged to ensure early identification and provide evidence-based intervention to all students who need it. Lindamood-Bell can help. Educators can learn our approach to literacy in a teacher workshop. Our programs are proven effective for students with dyslexia. Visit our website to explore our teacher workshops and the research behind our programs. Go to lindamood-bell.com. We can help you change the lives of dyslexic students. Julie's daughter was involved in a research project where Lindamood-Bell partnered with the University of Washington. Here's our conversation.
Hi, my name is Julie Gunter. I live in Seattle, Washington with my husband and our two daughters. We are a stone's throw from the University of Washington, and I'm here to talk about how that research study led by Dr. Nieman and Lindamood-Bell changed our family's life.
So tell me about your daughter. What kind of kid how old is she, and what kind of kid is she?
She is an amazing kid. She is an animal lover. She wants to be a polar bear scientist when she grows up. She is amazing. She's very empathetic, and she is curious about the world. My parents brought her to Carmel last month and told me that she spent hours in the tide pools, just fascinated by all the marine life that was inside each one. And she has a lot of energy. She's on a soccer team, and she now is a really avid reader.
Great. So tell me about her academic life. What was it like when did she start in kindergarten, or did she start earlier?
Yeah, so I was a co-op preschool mom. So she, from infancy on, was involved in a lot of preschool sort of play-based enrichment opportunities. She always loved school until about end of kindergarten, first grade, and then the tears started. So, gosh, it seems so long ago now because we've come so far, but actually when she was in middle of first grade, her first grade teacher came to me. There'd been tears for about a few months before that. She didn't want to go to school, and it was very unexpected for a kid who loves learning and is so curious. And she has those great social skills. So she, it wasn't anything having to do with friends. That was great. It was, she was on a very rudimentary level for reading. And all of her best friend was the top reader in her class. And she was seeing that they were all moving forward. And I think that she was becoming more and more conscious of being left behind. Her first grade teacher was in her last year of teaching. She was a veteran teacher, had been doing it 30 years. And I remember we had a parent conference, and it was just sort of a mid-year, just a very casual, just to touch base. And she said, "Your daughter isn't thriving here." She had been at the public school at that time, and something switched in me. I became very interested in finding another place for her to grow and learn.
Did you notice something at home?
So we went and toured some of the local Catholic schools in our area that that offer a way of teaching reading and writing that is more multisensory. And when I picked her up from her first day of school at this new school, we actually switched her mid-year. So within about a week or two after the teacher had told me that she said, I picked her up and she said, "Mom, I understood everything at school today. My teacher's a lifesaver." And so that speaks volumes. I think even at that young age, she understood how important her education was to her lifelong success and her happiness.
And did she take to reading right away?
Well, one of the red flags for us was in preschool, she didn't didn't recognize her name on a board with other children's names. I forget what year that was, but now we know with having dyslexia that it takes more work to be able to recognize how the letters and the sounds go together to make words. So that was one sort of, I guess, red flag early on.
And she's had a diagnosis of dyslexia since?
That came later. That came later. But there, I think with kids who participate in Dr. Nieman's study, that not all, there were signs that she was struggling with phonological awareness. So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that study. So she's in school, she's in first grade, and something must have triggered you to look for some extra help.
Yeah,
what was
so
that?
As I mentioned, we're close to University of Washington, and a spontaneous conversation with a colleague. I'm actually a former educator, as well as a writer, freelance writer. And a spontaneous conversation led me to reach out to the University of Washington Speech and Hearing Clinic. We went there for articulation. I later learned that there's often a correlation between a speech delay and a potential for learning challenges. And so we went there for articulation speech challenges, and that clinician there who was overseeing the graduate students shared with us a brochure on Dr. Nieman's study. I read it and called right away and spoke to Patrick, who is one of Dr. Nieman's partners there, and so that was how we first found out about it.
So what did the brochure say was going on?
I don't remember what the brochure said, other than that it offered 8 weeks of therapy at Lindamood-Bell as part of the study, and that it also involved MRIs.
Had you heard of Lindamood-Bell before?
I had not at that time. Since then, I was actually very interested in a national public radio series on dyslexia last fall. The journalist who was in charge of that series, she actually shared that she had been at Lindamood-Bell as a child, and that spoke volumes to me as well. That here, she's a successful journalist working with words and language, and so there's been other sort of ties to Lindamood-Bell. I've connected with other parents since then who've also had children go through Lindamood-Bell, and so I've connected with them online as well.
So when you talked to your daughter about doing this project, what was that conversation like?
I forgot to mention before, but she's very determined, and she so wanted to read that the idea of participating in MRI, in the MRI procedures, wasn't something that was going to stop her opportunity to be helped. I do remember that there was a bit of stress, I think, that I felt on my part when she was on campus, and she was. They actually have a MRI machine that's a pretend one that they'll have the kids go into. I remember prepping her and saying, act like a statue, free, don't move. And, she had to keep perfectly still, and she was able to pull it off. And that was, I think we celebrated with ice cream after, because I knew that was one thing that, she had to be able to do before she was able to participate.
And she didn't object to the hours of reading instruction during the summer?
I have heard other students also mention this, but so it was her summer break, and I remember having to remind her to keep her seatbelt fastened before I stopped, until the car was stopped, because she was so excited to go that she would literally jump out of the car. I've heard other parents describe a similar situation. I would never have envisioned that. I didn't know it could be so fun. I think she was also thirsty, like this sponge. At that age, she was first grade, the window of time when you can really help kids, there's a lot more impact when they're younger. And so she just, I think, neurologically, she was just very ready and thirsty for what Lindamood-Bell provided her. So I think that was also part of it.
And I'm sure that Dr. Nieman had some sort of initial meeting. What was the purpose of the project scientifically? Do you know? Or can you?
I know a lot more now than I did then. When I learned that she was accepted into the study, I found out in the airport. And I've reflected since then. There was something, being a writer myself, the idea of being in the airport and seeing people going places. I instinctively knew that this was a ticket out of where we'd been to a new place. To really, at that point as a parent, I was desperate to find her help. So I understood that this therapy she'd be receiving would be building her brain. But I also thought that they'd be teaching her tools to work around the challenges. It was only after the instruction happened that I think, as a parent, you're very focused on, okay, how do I maintain this? And I remember at the center at Lindamood-Bell basically being told, you don't understand, like you don't have to worry about maintaining this. Her brain is different now. The area that needed to, that needed to grow to become more efficient related to reading, that had changed. So that was really a aha moment.
Can you describe for people to maybe kind of visually walk us down where the kids went?
So our daughter knew that she was helping scientists learn about the human brain so that they could help other children learn how to read. Being an empathetic kid, I think that meant a lot to her. So there was, for her, not a lot of trepidation about going. It's on the campus is beautiful anyways, but where the center is, it's along the Montlake Cut. So there's behind the facility, there's boats going by, and I would stop for ice cream after. So we made a fun excursion out of it. She really felt that she was in control because even though she was at a young age, they spoke to her and made sure she understood that she could stop the MRI process, or really that she was in control about if she needed to pause and take a rest. Or I'll never forget the second time we went. I asked her if she wanted me to go with her to the MRI prep room and help her, and she said, "That's okay, Mom. I'm all right." And off she went with Patrick down the hall, to go get her procedure. So, as a parent, that was, as your kids grow up and you see them become more and more independent, that really impressed on me that this was a safe place, that she understood that she was helping other people, and that it was just part of the deal to get the instruction that she knew she needed.
And where was the instruction itself?
The instruction happened at Lindamood-Bell. They have centers all over the world, but this particular one was in Bellevue, so it was across the bridge from where we live, and it's in the sort of residential park area.
And so she went through, how many scans did she have?
The MRIs were, I'd want to say she's participated in about 6, but I'm not quite sure. The last MRI happened just last month, actually, so it would have been 2 years since the instruction occurred.
And so she went through this for 8 weeks. Was it 8 weeks?
Yeah,
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
And then tell me about kind of the wrap up of that summer project. What was that like?
So for 8 weeks of our summer, we headed over the bridge, Mount Rainier's there on our right-hand side, and she's jumping out of the car, off she goes. Those weeks flew by. I remember she went in struggling to read really basic, very basic level. I wouldn't even call them books, just very short sentences. She left after 8 weeks, with reading Magic Tree House books. I believe she received one of those as a part of end of the instruction celebration. But it seemed like celebrations were going on all the time there. I do remember one boy who had to be pulled out from under the couch or the sofa there. I think depending, every student has a unique experience, so I think he was maybe less enthused to perhaps go than other kids were, but even then, he ended up getting cajoled out of that space, and I think he was part of the celebrations by the end too. So.
And what were her results?
So our daughter, it's just every time I even think about it, it seems nothing short of miraculous, but a lot of hard work went into this result for her, and it wasn't just her hard work, but others as well. There's all the different scores related to, so her reading fluency increased by 2 grade levels within 8 weeks.
And she's only in first grade at this point.
So at that point, she was going into second grade, so the summer after her first grade year, and she increased by 2 grade levels in reading fluency after the 8 weeks.
So is she up to grade level? She must have been, because that's 0 to 2.
She's above grade level. I do say it wasn't a silver bullet in terms of all of the learning challenges that go along with learning differently. But for fluency, for being able to decode words and being able to read, sometimes she reads a little too quickly, actually, and we've got to slow her down. So for longer texts, because she makes it look so easy now that sometimes her teachers or anyone else who's interacting with her will forget that she is actually working harder to read versus students who don't have dyslexia or another learning difference that impacts reading. So that sometimes you have to remind yourself that she makes it look so easy.
And did she recognize the growth and change herself? Did she feel good about herself or changed about herself in any way?
So she jumps up in the morning ready for school. There's never been tears again. Some of it I think was going to a new school with smaller class size, really nurturing place. But a huge part was, again, back to how she felt when her best friend was reading and she wasn't, that she feels like she's part of the class, that she's not being left behind, that she's moved forward with the rest of her peers, and that also impacts math. Science is one of her favorite subjects. Impacts so many other academic areas. So even in the areas that there's still struggles, because she can read, everything's more manageable now. So.
That's good. If she wants to be a polar bear scientist, she better hurry up before she's a polar bear historian. She's
very aware of that. Yeah. I wish that all children had access to what our daughter was able to benefit from. It keeps me, I can't and I shouldn't stop thinking about that. In Washington State, legislation was just passed, signed by the governor to screen children with dyslexia statewide in all schools, or in public schools. So that's exciting. I think because children with reading challenges, often they look like any other kid. So as a society, I think often they can be overlooked. There's so many kids who are still in the same seat in the classroom literally as our child was, and if their parents don't have the resources, they're getting left behind. So I do think about that a lot. So I know Dr. Nieman's passionate about educating others and raising public awareness of children's needs, and the idea of being able to have this research impact, and it's really cutting edge research to the idea that it could help teachers and scientists better learn how to meet kids where they are and teach them according to how they learn. That's really exciting. So, one thing I didn't mention about at Lindamood-Bell, not only did we have the instruction that she received, but as a parent, we were given reports and testing evaluations. Those were really valuable. Knowledge is power, and so for me, as someone who is trained to do research, all I needed was just sort of some information that then I could go and do more research on my own, and so I could bring that then to her teachers, and so that was also invaluable. The testing, the evaluations that were done before, during, after, along with some of the research that Dr. Nieman has been able to share, and some still, is in the works and hasn't been shared yet. But we just had such a learning profile on our daughter that then we can help, share that with others who are working with her.
It's interesting now that we have, there's so much data on everything, and maybe one of the final frontiers is figuring out the individual brain and mapping that out and understanding that. And it sounds like you've got a lot of data on your daughter. Her learning skills and abilities and challenges. Yeah.
Well, I know what I was going to mention is another thing that I've learned about Lindamood-Bell is that there have been efforts to make the instruction more accessible to children who live in rural areas. Also, there's opportunities to receive the instruction during the school year, or if you're able to pair your child with another child, where the cost of instruction can be less. And so, or it's just, it can come to your home versus having to go to a learning center.
We have online instruction quite a bit now.
Online opportunities, which I think are relatively newer opportunities. So that's really exciting. And when we finished the 8 weeks of Seeing Stars, we were advised that we would love to participate in the math program, or I know visualizing and verbalizing would also be of interest, but so having sort of more flexible ways of receiving and accessing the instruction, that's exciting. Yeah, and actually it was so much fun that the idea of doing it during the school year, if we were able to go back to have her receive more instruction, say in math, it isn't far-fetched to think that she could go to school and then go to Lindamood-Bell after for additional instruction, which seems crazy, I know, if you think of what that school day would look like for her, but because it was so much fun, it was hard work, but that fun aspect to it, again, she would jump out of the car even after a long day of school, I think because she loved it so much.
You must feel good about her future. What's her upcoming school year going to look like?
So you asked if I feel good about her future. Right away, I think as a parent, you just want your child to be happy, and she feels good about her future. So that brings me a lot of joy. I just, am thrilled for her. She's such a hard worker, and so it's not that things come easy to her, but they're just, she loves to read. That's as Dr. Nieman has explained, it's the brain, in terms of what humans have been asked to do over, through human development. Learning how to read is a fairly new task that's been placed on the human brain compared to listening with your ears or seeing with your eyes. Learning how to read is a complex and fairly new activity. So it's sometimes I think, for some kids they pick it up so easily, so there's just this sense that all kids should learn without much effort. But for the 1 in 5, 1 in 6 children who can't, it can be really tough. So
that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, it is a lot of kids. So for her to be able now to, she gets a lot of confidence, and she's proud of her ability to read. And so, we haven't talked about this, but the cost too for children who can't read, the emotional cost is very high, and I think a lot of it comes out in middle school and certainly in high school if it's unremediated. And so for her to be a reader and to be proud and confident in her reading, that for a parent of a child with learning difference, you're at a higher risk for anxiety. Your child's at higher risk of anxiety, of depression. There's the emotional cost to this that I think sometimes gets forgotten. Maybe the academic achievement is the focus, but I think I'm really, I feel I'm more at peace, just not as worried as much about her emotional health, because again, she loves going to school, and she feels like she's part of that community and isn't being left behind.
Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening. Learn more about the University of Washington Research Project on our Lindamood-Bell YouTube page and at lindamoodbell.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are Lindamood-Bell.